Cover me now!
Who? Get your hands off her!
She stays here! Not a chance! Keep running!
Faster!
They're gaining!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is about love, fear, and a life-changing decision made on the eve of Tet. A powerful CEO leaves the countryside to return to the city for urgent business, believing everything will be fine. But deep down, he feels an unsettling worry he cannot ignore. Meanwhile, Tielac, the poor but kind-hearted girl he left behind, faces unexpected danger when a cruel stranger takes advantage of her isolation. Just when hope seems to fade, the CEO follows his instinct, rushes back, and finds her missing. What follows is a desperate search in the cold night and a breathtaking rescue that changes both of their hearts forever. This is not just a story about danger, it's about realizing who truly matters when everything else fades away. If you love emotional stories filled with romance, drama, and meaningful moments like this, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next touching story. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode. When the CEO finally left a small rural village to return to the city for urgent business before Tet, he carried with him a sense of responsibility, but also a hesitation he could not quite explain. The narrow dirt road stretched behind his car as it rolled away from the modest stone house where Tieu Lac stood watching in silence. She tried to smile and wave, pretending she was used to being alone. In truth, the approaching Lunar New Year only made the emptiness around her feel heavier. The village was slowly preparing for celebration, red banners hanging on wooden gates, the faint scent of sticky rice cakes steaming in distant kitchens. But inside her small home, everything felt quiet and fragile. After the car disappeared from sight, Tieu Lac closed the wooden door gently and returned inside. The house was simple: a worn wooden table, a small stove in the corner, and a few carefully folded clothes stacked neatly on a chair. She busied herself with small tasks to fight the loneliness. She cleaned the floor, arranged wildflowers she had picked that morning into a chipped ceramic vase, and began preparing a humble Tet meal, just enough for one person. She told herself she did not mind. She had always been alone during holidays. Yet this year felt different. The CEO's presence over the past weeks had brought warmth and laughter into her quiet life, and now that warmth seemed to have vanished too quickly. As evening began to settle, a cold wind swept through the village. The sky turned a deep gray blue, and most families had retreated indoors to gather around their dinner tables. Tieu Lac placed a small pot on the stove and stirred absent-mindedly, her thoughts drifting. She wondered if the CEO had arrived safely. She wondered if he would think of her when midnight fireworks lit up the city skyline. A soft sigh escaped her lips. She shook her head, scolding herself for being foolish. Someone like him belonged to a world of bright lights and towering buildings. She was only a poor girl in a forgotten corner of the countryside. What she did not know was that someone else had been watching the house from a distance. A shadow lingered beyond the bamboo fence, observing the quiet routine inside. The man had noticed that the expensive car had left earlier that afternoon. He had noticed that no one else came or went. To him, the isolated house seemed like an easy target. The festive noise from other homes masked subtle sounds, and the approaching New Year created a perfect distraction. His intentions were dark, fueled by greed and cruel opportunity. Inside, Tieu Lac felt an uneasy chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. She paused, glancing toward the door as if sensing something beyond it. The wind rattled the loose wooden panels, making them knock softly against the frame. She told herself it was just the weather. Still, her hands trembled slightly as she set the lid on the pot. The silence outside had grown heavier, almost suffocating. A sudden creak broke the stillness. Tieu Lac froze. Her heart began to pound in her chest as slow footsteps approached the front door. The handle shifted faintly, testing whether it was locked. Fear gripped her, cold and sharp. She stepped back instinctively, her breathing quickening. In that fragile, lonely house on the eve of Tet, she realized she was truly alone, and whatever was outside had no good intentions. The farther the car moved away from the village, the more unsettled the CEO became. At first, he tried to ignore the tightness in his chest, telling himself it was simply exhaustion from weeks of balancing business matters with his unexpected stay in the countryside. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, leading back to the towering buildings and glittering lights of the city, where contracts, meetings, and responsibilities awaited him. His phone vibrated non-stop with reminders and urgent messages from assistants preparing for year-end reports. Everything demanded his attention. Everything except the one thing his heart refused to let go of. Tielac's face lingered vividly in his mind. He could still see the way she stood quietly at the gate as his car drove off, pretending to be strong. He remembered the softness in her eyes, the unspoken loneliness she tried so hard to hide. The closer Tet approached, the more fragile she had seemed. She had smiled, but it was the kind of smile that asked someone to stay. He leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes for a moment, attempting to calm himself. "You're overthinking," he muttered under his breath. She had lived alone for years. She was stronger than she looked. And yet, something felt wrong. An invisible thread seemed to pull at him, urging him not to go too far. Outside the window, the scenery shifted from open rice fields to wider roads lined with factories and billboards. Fireworks advertisements and red holiday banners decorated the city entrance ahead. Normally, the sight would fill him with ambition and pride. This was his world, the world he had built with relentless effort. But tonight, it felt strangely distant. His thoughts grew darker. The village was isolated. Her house stood near the edge of the fields. What if someone had noticed his expensive car parked there over the past weeks? What if someone assumed she had money? Or worse, what if someone realized she was alone now? His heart skipped. "Turn the car around," he suddenly ordered. The driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror, surprised. "Sir, we're almost halfway to the city." "Turn around," he repeated firmly, his voice sharper this time. Without another question, the driver slowed down and made a careful U-turn. The sudden change in direction caused a rush of urgency to surge through him. He sat upright now, no longer pretending to be calm. His fingers tapped restlessly against his knee. Every passing second felt unbearably slow. He pulled out his phone and tried calling Tielac. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. A chill crept down his spine. She always answered quickly, even if only to say she was busy. The silence on the other end of the line was suffocating. He imagined her small house under the darkening sky, wind shaking the fragile doors, shadows stretching across the yard. The earlier sense of unease returned stronger than before, tightening around his chest like a vice. "Faster," he told the driver. The car sped along the narrow road, back toward the countryside. Streetlights became fewer, and darkness swallowed the edges of the path. In the distance, he could see faint glimmers from village homes, preparing for the New Year's Eve dinner. Firecrackers popped occasionally, echoing across the fields. The sound, meant to signal celebration, now felt like distant warnings. When they finally reached the familiar dirt road leading to her house, he didn't wait for the car to fully stop. He opened the door and stepped out quickly, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the uneven ground. The house stood ahead in near darkness. The front door was slightly open. His heart dropped. He approached slowly at first, then broke into a run. The wooden door creaked as he pushed it wider. Inside, the small pot was still on the stove. A chair had fallen sideways. The vase of wildflowers lay shattered on the floor. But Tielac was nowhere to be seen. Her name escaped his lips in a strained whisper that quickly turned into a desperate shout as fear overtook every rational thought in his mind. "Tielac!" His voice tore through the cold night air, but only the wind answered him. The CEO forced himself to breathe, though panic was already rising like a storm inside his chest. The overturned chair, the broken vase, the door left half open. These were not signs of someone stepping out for fresh air. Something had happened, something violent. He stepped back outside, scanning the yard with sharp, searching eyes. The moonlight was thin, barely illuminating the ground, but he noticed faint marks in the dirt, disturbed soil, uneven footprints leading toward the back of the house. His heart pounded so loudly it almost drowned out every other sound. Then he heard it, a muffled cry. It came from beyond the bamboo fence, near the overgrown field behind the house. Without hesitation, he ran. Branches scratched against his coat as he pushed through the narrow path. The sound came again, faint, frightened, desperate. His entire body surged with adrenaline. In that moment, he wasn't a composed businessman, nor a powerful CEO accustomed to negotiation and strategy. He was simply a man terrified of losing someone who had quietly become precious to him. As he reached the clearing behind the garden, the scene before him froze his blood. Under the shadow of a quicket tree, a man was gripping Tielac tightly, one hand clamped over her mouth as she struggled weakly in his hold. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale with fear. Tears streaked down her cheeks, glistening under the dim light. "Let her go!" the CEO shouted, his voice echoing sharply across the empty field. The man turned, startled, clearly not expecting anyone to return. For a split second, hesitation flickered across his face, but desperation quickly replaced it. "Stay back!" the man warned, tightening his grip. Tielac's eyes met the CEO's, and in them he saw fear, but also relief. She had heard his voice. She knew he had come back. That was enough. The CEO stepped forward steadily, ignoring the threat. "If you touch her again," he said coldly, "you won't leave this place." The tension snapped in an instant. The attacker tried to drag Tielac backward, but the CEO lunged forward with sudden force. The two men collided, stumbling onto the rough ground. The struggle was fierce and chaotic. Shoves, punches, desperate movements fueled by adrenaline. The attacker tried to strike again, but the CEO blocked him, not driven by anger alone, but by something far stronger, the instinct to protect. After several intense moments, the attacker finally lost balance and fell hard against the pile of rocks. Stunned and realizing he no longer had the advantage, he scrambled to his feet and fled into the darkness, disappearing between the fields. The CEO did not chase him. He immediately turned to Tielac. She had collapsed onto her knees, trembling uncontrollably. He rushed to her side, kneeling down, his hands gently holding her shoulders. "It's okay," he said softly, though his own voice shook. "You're safe now." The moment those words sank in, her composure shattered. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his chest. He wrapped both arms tightly around her, pulling her close as if shielding her from the entire world. He could feel her heartbeat racing wildly against him. He pressed his cheek against her hair, closing his eyes in overwhelming relief. "I shouldn't have left," he whispered. She shook her head weakly, clinging to him as if he might disappear again. Above them, the distant sound of early fireworks began to echo from the village, small bursts of light signaling the coming new year. But in that quiet field, under the cold night sky, the only thing that mattered was that she was alive and in his arms. In that fragile, powerful moment, he understood something with complete clarity. The city, the contracts, the success, it all meant nothing if she was not safe. And this time, he would not leave her behind again.